Lauren says she's curious about the benefits of breaking down materials to speed the composting process and wondering what is the most practical and low labor way to do it. So is that like running a lawnmower over the materials, using a leaf shredder or something else? And Kat, why don't we go to you first?
Yes, breaking down materials definitely helps in the process, and especially as you're talking about woody materials, having smaller wood chips or shavings. But there's also, of course, you don't want to have too many woody materials in your compost because they take longer to break down generally. I like to keep about 10% of my overall recipe in wood chips. Otherwise, you have to end up screening them out. But breaking them down, I know one of the things I'm excited to learn more about, and Athena, I think, is a real authority on the Jora composting systems, which some of our farmers, and I think, Lauren, you might be one of them, getting the Jora composting system, which is an in-vessel insulated compost system that works really well to do that first sort of breakdown process that then can be followed up in a bin system or a windrow pile. Likewise, you know, I know that when I use, when I'm feeding my worms food scraps, the smaller I can make those materials, the quicker my worms are going to be able to break those down with the help of all of the microbes that work with the worms. So it's true for food scraps, and it's also true for feedstocks. And yes, lawnmowers are a good way to sort of break down grass or hay. If you have the time, there's a cool little trick you can do. It's not really farm scale, but you can use like a metal trash can and a weed whacker and your leaves, and you can sort of like mix it like a drink and you get nice shredded leaves. Those also running the leaves over with your lawnmower can help. When you break down the particle sizes, you increase the space that microbes can be. So the more pieces a leaf is in, the more actual surface area you're creating, and then the microbes have more places to be. So that's the reason why that works. It's also why blending materials can work so well. So I'll leave it there. I'll bet Athena and Natasha have things to add.
Yeah, Athena, go ahead.
Kat, you covered it well. Again, microbes have really dinky mouths. So the smaller you can make at least the food scraps and some of the woody materials, carbon sources is excellent. Mowing over them for a Jora, we recommend even chopping, if you've got a bucket and you can take one of those little blade things you use in your garden and put your food scraps in that and chop it all up, and just make sure most of the pieces are pretty small. You're always going to have orange peels and avocado pits. I know that avocados are super popular these days, so there's not a lot you can do about those, and you'll just have to compost them best you can and then put them in your bin, and they may or may not decompose. And then a variety of carbon sources, the best way to handle the carbon materials. Natasha.
Yeah, great, thank you. And I'll just add, and we can put up a picture of the sort of bucket chopping method that Athena just mentioned. But that's whatever way you do it. You know, I personally have, we don't have kids and we live in a private place where I'm not worried about people coming into my composting area. I have a hatchet that I leave in an old stump next to my compost system. And so the other thing to think about is, you know, like a whole Hubbard squash or pumpkin is going to take longer to break down than if you can chop it up. And so it's a really reasonable thing when we're thinking about community, you know, getting food scraps from your community, whether it's from your CSA members or, you know, wherever really, is to ask people, let them know, you know, hey, can you just cut that cabbage in quarters before you put it in your bin and bring it to me, and sort of spread that workload out. And often people may just not think about it. They may just not know that that's important. And so, you know, you still might get, you know, a whole squash coming through or something like that. But the more you can just let people know that that's helpful. I work with one group, and the compost stewards are like militant about having everything be cut into like 1 inch or less. That's really not necessary. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It'll certainly compost a lot faster, but it doesn't really need to be that exact. And I certainly, personally, am not that exact in mine. I mean, I think a cabbage cut in quarters is probably fine. So hopefully that helps. And I will also say that if I know compostable packet, like cups or plates, are truly only fiber and not lined with microplastics, and often I know that if I'm the one in control of having them in my house, I will just like dump out a bag load of those and run over them with my lawnmower. And they make this great popping sound. I promised a couple people I'm going to try to get a video of that this summer. Because there are times where if you're having a cookout or a big family get together, it's just handier to use something like that. And that can be a great source of carbon. But again, a whole plate or certainly a stack of plates are not going to break down, and it's not going to be as accessible or mix as well with the nitrogen rich food scraps if they're all in a big clump. And so anything you can do to sort of fluff it up and cut it up is better.
And Natasha, if I might add, just and we know you're all farmers, since you're obviously going to have leftover produce and other things coming off of your farm. And so if you can't get to it right away to compost it, put some carbon over it and set it aside. And then when you can mow over it or chop it up and then add it to your drawer or bin system, or if you have a windrow or a pile system, that's the way you can handle those things even whole and not worry so much about them.
Yeah, for sure. We have
I just want to close with it just to give folks the understanding that, you know, all you're doing by breaking down the materials is speeding up the process. So if you want it to go faster, break them down. If you don't have time for that, just know it's going to take longer to compost.